I didn't really start writing again in earnest until I was at university. And then we had a university comedy troupe, very much like Monty Python. And every university in England has a comedy troupe, and there's much competition to know who's got the best. I mean, the Cambridge Footlights, which is where Monty Python and Borat and Beyond the Fringe and all those people came from, is the one that we all aspired to be.
Right, of course.
They were like, oh my God.
Oh, I used to watch it every night.
Yeah, well, all those guys came through the Cambridge Footlights Revue. So we would go down there and try and steal some of their material. But we put on our own shows, and so I was writing comedy sketches and performing comedy things, and we would take them out on the road, and to make a little money, as students, we would play the one called the pubs and clubs circuit, which were working men's clubs and pubs that had wanted like comedy entertainment. And we also, this might sound a little risque, but when we went to the working men's clubs, we used to rent a stripper to come with us.
Oh,
yeah, because the show was a mixture of comedy and striptease.
For less.
For less, exactly. And there was an agency in Leeds, which was near our city, where you could rent a stripper. I learned an awful lot about women touring around with a stripper, because I had just come from an all-boys boarding school.
So Bernard Shaw writes these strong women, but Peter Colley writes these.
Oh well, I'm not sure if I write for strippers, but I certainly I got to know a different side of female kind.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
Yeah, writing for women is always a challenge for someone who came through an all-boys family. I have two brothers.
But I think your inquisitiveness probably.
Yeah, I think you just any writer puts yourself in another person's shoes. I'm sure you do the same when you do the male. You have to write male characters.
Right, and there must be some degree of you're empathic, you're sensitive, right. You pick up.
I think that when all writers, good writers, I think have a certain empathy for people who are very unlike them. And the problem was the only woman who I knew well in my life was my mother, and there was no drama there. I mean, she was like one of those angelic mother types, and the perfect
like your
mother.
wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was young, I was always putting women on a pedestal, and they were like perfect, And
well, that's as
men
it should be.
Yes, men were these sort of grimy little characters you play rugby against. Try and knock them over as best you can. Whereas women were these delicate, dainty, sort of ethereal characters who had all the ethics and decency and never told lies. I found that wasn't strictly true as I grew up. When the Reaper Calls, yes, Colleen, the innocent character, when the Reaper Calls, yes, she's definitely one of those, the innocent.
Femme fatale.
Oh, and the femme fatales, yes. No, they're in the shows too.
Right.
This I'll Be Back for Midnight has the most fatale of all femmes you can imagine, and I'm not quite sure where she came from, because that was not something I had really experienced in life. But I just couldn't believe it how the audience just took to her. They just love villainy so much. So I realized that I have to sort of always balance your characters. I often have a central character, either female or male, who is sort of like the ethical, the innocent, the decent, the sort of, the one that the audience latches onto. But it's always the other characters who are impeding the progress of decency,
Right.
that make drama. And they're always the ones, as George Bernard Shaw said, always give the devil the best tunes. And they're so much more fun to play.
Right, and without the conflict, you really don't have a story.
You don't, exactly.
Right.
I mean, the first thing I look for in any kind of story is an underlying theme that I'm really interested in, and an underlying conflict that will carry you through two whole solid acts of a play or a musical. Because if it doesn't have legs, you're going to run out of conflict after 2 or 3 scenes, and then suddenly you have to start inventing conflict, and that never works. I can smell it a mile off when someone's sort of throwing conflict in just for the heck of it.
To keep it going.
Just to keep it going.
Because they wanted a 2-act instead of a 10-minute play. I've always thought that the type of story dictates the length. And that's
completely.
certainly true
Right.
with what we're talking about. You can't write a full-length play by some 2% milk story. You've got to have the buttermilk.
Right. Yes. I mean, there are short stories and there are short plays, and they have their own structure, their own life, and it's a different thing. And then there's one act, and that has its own. Sometimes you can write a tremendous one act, and people often say, wow, I'd love to make that into a full length, but you say, I'm not sure if it would.
Right.
But sometimes, I think there are several famous plays, if I recall rightly, The Fantastics, the musical, started out as a one-act play at university, and they expanded that nicely into a full length. And I think is it Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern started out as a one-act?
Yeah.
And that was pushed out to two.
Yeah, and Driving Miss Daisy was quite short. It was one of the first very short plays. I think they did that without intermission, didn't they? Hour and 10 minutes.
Right. That's a coming trend right now. Is the one not so much 60, but it's usually at least 70, 80, 90 minute, no intermission. Right. There's a lot of controversy about that. Personally, I like an intermission because I'm one of those people who just enjoys the sort of the release of breath you get at a certain point in the story, and the sense of gathering, wondering where it's going, and then getting re-energized, and then coming in and seeing a second act. There's something just organic to me about it.
Do you ever wander around in the lobby?
Oh yeah.
And listen to what people say? Because they don't know what you look like.
Well, especially, the great secret is the men's urinal is the place. You have a whole bunch of guys. You'll probably never know this, of course, but they're lined up, and oh my God, the things I hear. That was a load of crap.
No pun intended.
Yes. You hear the most amazing things in the restroom. But yeah, it's very interesting. Especially in my own place, I definitely keep a weather eye open, because you can get some very interesting things to see how people react.
You're a pretty humble fellow.
Oh,
so
really?
I don't.
That's news to me.
I don't want to embarrass you by stating this question this way, but if you could give us a little insight as to why it is you think that your work has had so much success, because it really has. You're a multi-award-winning international playwright. And Peter Colley is one of those rare playwrights who makes a living at what he does. So what is it about your work specifically?
Well, I think there are two sort of sides to it. One is that I tend to write very theatrical pieces. I love theater, which means, I have this thing in the back of my head that audiences are paying good money. They're leaving their comfort of their homes. They're driving some distance. The musical, the Cagney musical, the cheapest ticket price is like $42. So two of those, that's $84. And I keep thinking, I've got to give these people a reason to come out and love the theater and love the experience. And that sort of hovers over me like the sword of Damocles every time I'm writing. It means that I have to really focus on making sure that I'm never boring, that I'm not just sort of drifting off, or I'm allowing my own personal sort of fascinations to sort of, create talking heads that go on and on about stuff. I really have to hone my focus on making this really attention-grabbing.
Riveting.
Riveting.
I would call your plays riveting.
Right. That's the thing.
Yes.
And I think the other reason that they're successful is partly because I have a piece of an impresario in me, I think, where or at least I understand the producer's point of view. The people that I have to reach from a business point of view are the people who decide what shows to put on their season. And these are very hard decisions to make, because theaters have always been in financial trouble. They have since Shakespeare's time.
Kind of like churches.
Exactly, yes. And so it's a real dilemma for these people. And my job is to make their life easier.
To make them money.
Well, it's not just to make them money, because a lot of theaters are looking for prestige as well. They're looking for their mandate. They're looking so that they can tell their audiences when they're going back to them for their annual subscription drive or whatever. Look, we presented you last year with a wonderful season of riveting theater. And, we can do it again. And so it's part of this way theater carries on.